All right, what is up, everybody? This is Daniel Barrett from AdWords Nerds here. It's been a while. I haven't gone live in a little while. I have been traveling. I was in Europe, and then I was sick, and then I just was out in St. Louis. I was actually lucky enough to go out to the REI Black Book offices in St. Louis, which was super, super fun, and do some live training for some of their clients. And I'll tell you what, teaching live is really, really fun. It's a really interesting experience. I really, really like it. And one of the things I like most about it is as you engage with people, you can kind of see their expressions. You can see if they're slunched forward or if they're like really, intent on what you're talking about, right? And you get questions live that are sometimes hard to get online. Like if you're doing a webinar, everyone's kind of virtual and, they got to virtually raise their hand. But if you're teaching in front of somebody, you can actually see the expression on their face and you can say like, hey, you look like you have a question right now, right? So a lot of interesting back and forth as I was doing these seminars. And one of the best things about that is that it helps crystallize ideas. So I have these thoughts and ideas like anybody. I'm always engaged in what we do, which is, finding motivated seller leads for investors. And so thinking about that, and you got all this stuff kind of banging around your head. And then when you start working with students live, you start to formulate these things in really interesting ways. Something that occurred to me that I never really thought about before was that every real estate investor that's actually successful finding motivated seller leads online goes through a pretty structured set of phases. This is kind of like a roadmap. Everybody's got to start at the beginning and everybody's going to move through every phase, regardless of how fast you do it or how slow you do it or when you do it or how you do it. You're always going to go through these phases and you're going to go through them in order. And the thing that struck me was that when we see people try to skip the phases, that's when people run into problems. We've had clients that came in and said, look, like I've got a $10,000 budget and I want to spend as fast as possible, and I want to get deals as quickly as possible, and I want to get leads as quickly as possible, and I want to dominate my market. And they seem like they have everything going for them, and they just don't get success. And it occurred to me that like, the problem is they tried to skip the stages. But then on the flip side, you've got people with much smaller budgets and much tougher markets. They're newer investors, and they have success, have significant success, and do significant number of deals online. And I was like, oh, it's because they went through the stages in order. And so everybody does this, but when you try to skip the order, that's when problems start. So let's talk about what these stages are, because I find this really interesting. Now, everybody's got to start from scratch. Everybody's got to create a campaign, right? So this is really like phase one, is when you create your thing and you launch it, right? Everybody's got to do that, regardless of whether you're starting. And then you've got the first, let's say, month or the first 10,000 impressions or however you want to measure it. But basically like the first stage of that, right? And that's really just about saying, have we made any major errors? Do we have enough traffic in our market? Do we have the right kind of keyword set up? You can kind of tell if something's majorly wrong, right? If you're setting up your own stuff, this is kind of the phase where you're looking for errors that you made. If you're working with a company, you probably don't have to worry about that, but you're still going to go through a phase of being like, am I in the right market? Is there enough traffic volume here for me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But once you're saying like, okay, you're past that stage, you're basically saying, yes, I have the basics down. I know I'm okay. I know I'm in a market that's going to be all right, whether it's difficult or not, right? At least I have the raw material from which I can create the leads and deals that I need. Then you move into phase two. And phase two is all about getting to at least break even. We call this better than break even at AdWords Nerds. And it's the idea of being like, okay, am I cash flow positive? If I make, let's say, $10,000 on every wholesale deal that I do, clearly if I spend more than $10,000, I'm losing money. And if I'm spending less than $10,000 to acquire that deal, I'm making money, right? It's not complicated. You want to spend less than you make. That's how we know you're making money. Now, in the beginning, if you haven't done a deal yet, right, it's hard to tell that. So you end up estimating. You say like, okay, how many leads do I need to close a deal? How many, how much can I pay for each one of those leads before I break even? So it's like, okay, cool. If I'm paying $100 a lead and I know that I can spend $10,000 and break even before I get a deal, well, then it's 100 I don't know, I'm bad at math, but you can do the math and figure it out, right? So that's essentially what we're doing. When we manage an account for a client, essentially what we're trying to say is, are we coming in below the numbers that we know are their break-even numbers? Meaning, am I acquiring that 10,000 deal at anything less than $10,000? Because if I am, that client is making money. Now, they may not be making as much money as we want them to make. Their ROI may not be the best yet, but that's later on. We're still early. Right? This is only phase 2. We have phase 1, which is just setting up the campaign and making sure that it's okay. Phase 2 is, am I coming in below my break-even numbers, right? And you really have to do that, because if you get into that phase 1 and you try to scale at that point, or you try to maximize your ROI, what you end up doing is throttling your traffic, throttling your volume, and not really making as much money as you could. So if you get to that better than break-even number, that's phase 2. That's awesome. Then you move into phase 3. Now, phase 3 is either scale it or improve it. There's really only 2 directions you could do. You could scale it, which is drive up the amount of volume, either by spending more or getting better, or you can improve the efficiency, which is typically cutting back. And moving between those 2 phases of scaling and cutting back, and scaling and making it cheaper, scaling and making it more efficient. That's a cycle that essentially continues for the entire lifetime of the account. Once you move past those first 2 phases into that either scale or improve phase, well, then you just kind of stay there, because you're always either doing one of those 2 things. You're either trying to get more of what you have, or you're trying to make what you have better. And the problems that people run into are almost always because they try to scale when they're really in phase 1, or they try to make things better when they're really in phase 2, or they try to scale it up, but they never actually made sure that it was cash flow positive. And if you skip out of order, you run into all sorts of problems. But even if you're going slower than you want, if you know you're on the track, if you know you're going through these phases, you know you're moving through these stages in the right order, you can be assured that sooner or later, you will get to where you want to be. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be as profitable as you need it to be, and maybe it's not the best investment for you, right? You may make more money doing something else, which is totally fine. But I do know that if you go through the phases in the right order, you have a much, 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 much higher chance of success than you do if you jump around. Let me know if that makes any sense. I hope you guys are having an excellent rest of your day, and I will talk to you very soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.